Welcome to Off the Record with me, Sanny Ntayombya. Every Friday, I bring a brand new perspective to the week's old headlines. So sit back, relax, and let's get that conversation going. But before we do, make sure you hit that follow button. And now, let's get into the very first headline.
I don't agree with the saying, all is fair in love and war. Why? Because in my view, without ethical boundaries, humans are no better than wild animals. That's why, despite how horrific armed conflict is, there are rules that govern it. These rules are found in ancient texts like the Jewish Torah, the Christian Bible, the Muslim Quran, and all the Hindu holy books. In modern legal texts, many of these rules of war are codified in the Geneva Conventions and the Nuremberg Principles. While these rules already apply to the Great Lakes region, I believe it would be wise to add one more rule. That is the no interahamwe, no Akazu allowed rule to govern just how we relate to each other, especially in wartime. As nations that have signed the Genocide Convention, it goes without saying that every country in our region should do all it can to quell the threat of genocidal supremacism. Rwanda, in particular, knows what happens when this doesn't occur. It leads to the death of millions. In 1994, tens of thousands of Interahamwe militia butchered over 1 million innocent men, women, and children simply because they were Tutsi. And despite what some deniers claim, this genocide wasn't a sudden eruption. It was planned at the highest levels of the Juvenal Habyarimana government. As British journalist Andrew Wallace has noted in his book, Steeped in Blood, the architects of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi weren't only found in Juvenal Habyarimana's government. They were part and parcel of his very own family. According to Wallace, the masterminds of the genocide were part of what they call the Akazu, a small familial group led by the First Lady, Agathe Kanziga Habyarimana. This group, also known as Network Zero because, and hear this, their goal was a Rwanda with zero Tutsis, thankfully, failed to reach their goal in 1994. However, unfortunately, Network Zero and the ideology that powers it has not been eradicated. Its leader, Agathe Habyarimana, is still pulling strings from her comfortable home in Paris, France, and its adherents are gathering strength all over the world. In a just world, in a fair world, the Interahamwe killers and their Akazu godparents would be wandering through the globe, fearful and ashamed. Unfortunately, we do not live in a fair world. These forces of evil have found homes across Europe, North America, and Africa. Most dangerously, for Rwanda at least, they found not just a home in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, but also an operating base. Now called the FDLR, these genocidaires received direct support from the Felix Tshisekedi government, obtaining arms, uniforms, and funds from his regime. Understanding just how dangerous the FDLR Tshisekedi axis is for national security, Rwanda has taken some major steps to blunt the threat. Over the last few months, Angolan President João Lourenço has attempted to reduce tensions between Rwanda and the DRC. After many meetings between soldiers and intelligence officers from both countries, and here I'm meaning the DRC and Rwanda, a plan was presented to the foreign ministers of Rwanda and the DRC in Luanda, Angola, over the weekend. The plan called for a disarmament and repatriation of the FDLR to Rwanda as the first step towards the normalization of diplomatic relationships between the two nations. There's no doubt, and hear this, there's absolutely no doubt that this harmonized plan was shared with the Congolese presidency and approved by the president himself before it was brought to Luanda. But guess what? When it came time to sign the deal on Saturday, Congolese Foreign Minister Thérèse Wagner, refused. She absolutely refused. Now, according to journalists close to Kinshasa, she not only rejected the plan that would lead to the neutralization of FDLR and the lifting of Rwanda's defense measures, she also refused direct dialogue with M23. To make matters worse, she then rejected any further meetings between the defense and intelligence personnel from both sides. So, not only did she reject the presented plan, but she also halted any additional talks. To me, it sounds like Tshisekedi has chosen conflict over peace with Rwanda. Why do I conclude this? Well, not only has Tshisekedi refused to support, continued to support FDLR, he's also invited some of the most notorious members of the Akazu, those people who did everything here in Rwanda, to live in the DRC. Here, I'm referring to 6 infamous genocidaires who had been living in Niamey, Niger. Names like Captain Innocent Sagahutu, Major Francois Javier Zuoneme, Prosper Mugiraneza, Alphonse Neziryayo, Andre Najerura, and Prote Zigiranyirazio, commonly known as Monsieur Z or Mr. Z. So here are the facts. Tshisekedi has refused to distance himself from the FDLR, as evidenced by his foreign minister's actions over the weekend. And worse, he has welcomed into his country some of the very architects of Rwanda's tragedy. So, what does this tell me? It tells me that there is no level of depravity to which Tshisekedi will not sink to in order to harm Rwanda and its people. I hope the world is watching. I certainly am. Now, there is nothing as maddening to me as Kigali traffic. Yes, I know you will find traffic in any major city, but Kigali traffic is a special kind of beast. I mean, you'll have cars, trucks, buses, motos, and men pushing carts, all fighting to inch their way forward. The gridlock is sometimes so bad that if you live in places like Kanombe, Rusororo, Kabuga, and work in the city center, you better leave home at 5:30 a.m. in order to get to work at 7 a.m. sharp. Because if you get caught up in the morning traffic, you'll probably be in traffic for at least an hour and a half. Kigali traffic is sometimes so bad, I've actually seen a VIP motorcade get stuck in one. There are a couple of reasons for this. I think there are a couple of reasons for this gridlock. One, the size of our roads. The vast majority of our roads were built at a time when cars were luxuries. I remember a time when the only cars on the road used to be government vehicles, NGO Land Cruisers, Twejerane taxis, army jeeps, and a few motos. Today, it seems that every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Sally has a car. Rwandans have just gotten wealthier and bought more vehicles. Unfortunately, all those cars are being driven on roads that were built when only bosses had cars. More cars plus the same roads equals gridlock. To be honest though, I really can't fault the government. It's literally impossible to build roads at the speeds at which cars are entering the market. An initiative that I'm hearing being bandied about to reduce road congestion is a series of dedicated bus lanes. The idea being, if public buses are able to move quickly from point A to point B by passing all the private cars stuck in traffic, they'll be more efficient and make more people leave their cars at home and use public transport instead. Taken at face value, that seems like a good idea. But to be honest, I don't think that more roads, dedicated bus lanes, and additional public transport options will fix the traffic gridlock. Why? Because in my opinion, the problem is us, the people who actually use the roads. It's common to see drivers act like the rules of the roads don't apply to them. You'll see someone see a long line of cars in front of them, and instead of waiting like everyone else, you then see them decide that no, They cannot wait in line and then accelerate into incoming traffic. And guess what? As soon as one driver makes that move, then others also do. And then boom, gridlock ensures. Or another instance, one driver will decide that they need to turn into an intersection by all means fair and foul, and to hell with the consequences. And to be honest, the less I say about motos and their absolute madness, the better. Unless we, the road users, actually learn how to drive in a proper manner, following not just the traffic guidelines, but also common sense and common courtesy, unending traffic jams will be our fate. And if courtesy doesn't work, can I suggest that the government add some overhead traffic cameras all over the city, especially on busy sections, to punish drivers that flout traffic rules, in addition to all the Sophias all over Kigali? I mean, speed cameras have done their job. Rarely will you see anyone speeding these days. Now, what I think is we need cameras that enforce the other rules of the road. And it's a win-win. More fines will not only equal more money into the treasury, it will also equal better road etiquette as well. And that's something that I can get behind 100%. Even if I might end up getting fined for, making a few mistakes here and there. Now, I'll be traveling to Uganda in a few days' time to do a bunch of interviews with different Ugandan movers and shakers for the long-form podcast. Now, I used to travel by bus to Kampala, but the numerous nasty, deadly bus accidents along the Kampala-Gatuna highway have made that option kind of impossible for me. Actually, it's gotten so bad that the famous Jaguar bus has been suspended by the Ugandan Ministry of Transport after one of its vehicles was involved in a crash that killed 8 people on September 1st, just the other day. So, because I don't want to be another unfortunate victim of Ugandan road carnage, I've chosen to fly. I've bitten the bullet, I'm buying the ticket. So I booked my return flight to Entebbe with Kenyan Airways. The return ticket, to and fro, cost me exactly $264, or just over 300,000 francs. That's a pretty high price when you compare it to the fact that a bus ticket will probably cost 25,000 francs. But what really shocked me, though, was not just the price, but was discovering the fact that out of the $200+ that I paid, $100 was just the taxes on the ticket. Think about that. Just out of the $264, out of all that money, $100 was for the taxes. That should not be allowed to happen. East African leaders need to wake up and smell the coffee. All the countries in the East African community, barring South Sudan and Burundi, have national carriers. So who will travel on them if prices of airfare are kept artificially high because of the crazy taxes imposed on aviation travel? I mean, I don't know. Yes, these countries get a few tax dollars from the airfare, but then they lose a whole lot more as people refuse to travel on their overpriced aircraft. Lower taxes mean better prices. Better prices mean more travel. More travel means more tourism revenues for the different countries. So why can't our politicians get it? Why are they so lazy? Or do they just hate us that much? I personally just don't get it. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for making it to the very end. Remember to follow us on our social media and to make sure to check out our other podcast, The Long Form with Sanny Ntayombya. It comes out every Monday like clockwork. Hope to have you back next Friday. Have a great weekend.